Hello, everyone. We're back here after the election, and as you probably have already realized, in District 2, that seat for commissioner in Charlotte County was already decided. Incumbent Chris Constance, he did not move on. He's already wrapping up his office, I'm hearing today, and John Fleming won that seat. But it's not exactly the same for District 4, where the incumbent also had to resign or had to step down. But instead, that seat moves on to the general election. This is why we're here today with Michael Melton. He is a non-party affiliate, libertarian, if I'm not mistaken, running in District 4 for commissioner against Kim Amantri that won the Republican nomination. Michael, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hi. Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Michael, can you tell our audience and our voters out there a little bit about yourself, your background, what causes you to want to run for commissioner? You're a busy guy with family and your own business, from what I understand. Am I correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I just a little bit about my background. I was born and raised here in Inglewood. Went to school at Vineland all the way through to Lemon Bay. Graduated in '03. Went to college in Tampa. Completed an engineering program. Graduated and then pursued a internship up there for a little while, and then moved back here once my son was born to lay down roots and ultimately open up my business. And yeah, just that was 15 years ago at this point. Son just turned 10, so it's it's been a wild ride, but yeah, look
So
forward.
you run an
Oh, go ahead.
engineering business locally here, is that correct?
Yeah. Engineering, enterprise engineering here locally, and we do residential engineering, structural work, septic design work, things like that. In the past year, I've done a lot of storm damage, dealing with insurance companies and some of the trials and tribulations that the homeowners have had to deal with convincing insurance companies what storm damage looks like was one of the reasons why I decided to push my uh, self into the political sphere a little bit. I'm also on the construction industry licensing board here in Charlotte County. I've been doing that for 8 years now. Served 2 years as chairman, a couple years as vice chair. But just helping the community bridge the gap between what their construction needs are and um, what they have to do to get through permitting, dealing with the county, making sure they don't have a problem in the future. One of the things that happened after the last storm was the county went around and documented a lot of the damage, and so people, you know, if they were in one of those storm damaged areas and fixed their house without pulling a permit, then a lot of those folks are calling me nowadays to help get that rectified.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, your normal job, your business, you have experience in dealing directly with these land use rules and regulations, sewage systems, damages, and so on. That is what you do for a living. So
Yeah.
you bring to the table experience already in what a commission actually does.
Yeah, to some degree, having that technical background certainly helps understand where a lot of the costs that are associated with capital projects, infrastructure projects, uh, to some degree, if reclamation projects, things of that nature that have to go on. Absolutely, I deal with the code books day in and day out, Muni code, Charlotte County code, um, ASCE codes, all just alphabet soup. But dealing with the county bureaucracy, the water management, um, permitting agencies, DEP, all of those agencies, I have a pretty intimate familiarity with them and some existing relationships as well that could potentially become useful on the technical side of things.
And just
Yeah.
so our audience understands too, where do you stand politically? Because you are non-party affiliate. So
Yeah.
you didn't run in the primaries because Florida is a closed primary state. So only if you're party affiliated can you run in the primaries. How, where do you stand on the political spectrum?
So I consider myself to be a libertarian. That's a pretty good uh, general catch-all. I feel like a lot of people these days, if given an opportunity, would consider themselves libertarian. Right now, everything is so bipartisan that folks have a hard time breaking free of that identity, it seems like, even though when you talk to them about what they actually believe, they're very much libertarian by nature to some degree. Everybody, um, well, I can't say everybody, most people want to live in some form of a civilized society, and at some point there has to be some level of government to help organize the will of the people who are being governed in that area and address the needs of the bigger picture goals that can't necessarily be tackled by individuals in that community. And so in general, libertarian, when it comes to social issues, I'm a pretty liberal guy just because I don't feel like the government should be sticking their nose in people's business. What happens between two consenting adults, if it, nobody's getting hurt or nobody's rights are being violated, then the government has no position there. I'm a pretty conservative when it comes to financial stuff that just by nature, I grew up a fairly poor kid. My mom was a single mother who worked very hard, and so being financially responsible, I don't know any other way of living, and so you live within your means, and that applies to me as an individual, and it should apply to government as well. So
So
those two general statements pretty much sum it up. Yeah.
let me ask you then, do you believe, if I'm hearing you right, in a limited the Republican form of government?
Well, yeah, the I believe in a limited federal government. When you start talking about what happens at the state level, then you can have a little bit more discussion because the states' rights, basically anything that wasn't initially laid out, right, in the first uh 10 amendments was basically left up to the discretion of the states originally. And so in my opinion, the original intent was for the states to have a little bit more say in what happens within their government. And then I believe, no, this is just an extension of that, that when you get down to the local level is where things happen day to day. The decisions that are made day to day impact people's lives more so than even at the state level. And then at the federal level, even more so, they're up there bickering back and forth, but it doesn't really affect what happens to us day to day here. But the local level, it's different, and so those decisions really can affect the lives. So you have to have a strong, involved local government, one that is engaged with the constituency and ultimately working as an extension of them to bridge the gap between the local needs and the state level, and then perhaps even the federal level where the actual money to execute the needs come from. Florida is a donor state. We do pay more into the federal system than we pulled back. Even which is kind of surprising, even when you consider the amount of federal dollars that come from FEMA in times of emergency. Some of those storm damage bills can be quite large. But so there is a balance there. But I believe that the strength in government should lie at the local level and then filter up from there um, to some degree. Obviously, the purse strings come from the top.
What made you decide to run now? What was the pivotal turning point
So
for you?
the thing that made me decide to run now was my the timing coincides with the end of the my construction industry licensing board tenure there, and I was kind of thinking what I wanted to do next. And at the time when I first started considering making the run, it was that I wanted. I felt that, no offense to the past commissioner, but I just felt like it was time for new infusion of energy. Um, and this is something people who know me personally will tell you that this is something that is not out of the blue. I've wanted to potentially pursue something like this for a long time. I've talked about it. Oh, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? When I run, do that, talk to clients, everybody, a lot of folks in the community have encouraged me to pursue doing something like this. But timing is better. What better time than now, honestly? I just feel like I'm in a good position to benefit the community with my skill set. I'm still in an overtime work kind of mindset. There was some conversation in the past about, full-time, part-time position. I plan on making this like an overtime type role, being available outside of normal business hours. It just
Do you think
makes
the job as commissioner, is something you would pursue full time? It is a part-time position, but is it something that you would invest yourself in full time?
Yeah,
As some people,
absolutely.
do you
Absolutely.
think it should be
The
a full-time job?
I mean, I'm honestly kind of surprised that it's not. I mean, I guess on paper, part-time versus full-time. To me, there's very work is part of my identity, and so there's really, maybe that's just like the grind set millennial mentality that I have, I guess. But for what it's worth, I've always been a hard worker. Work has been physical labor initially, and now working with computers and doing the technical side of it has been one of the only means I have of climbing the socioeconomic ladder. So hard work is, I mean, it's just second nature to me. And so the idea that I would change that just because I have this new role doesn't really, it doesn't compute in my brain. I will just be using my time instead of working in my office now. I'll be working from the commissioner's office, setting up meetings, trying to engage with the community. One of the things I've heard a lot about while I've been asking folks what they would like to see happen is more hands-on, more accessibility, um, with the commissioners. And we're in the age of technology. It's not difficult to
No.
keep the citizens updated through venues like this, or even just their own personal YouTube updates, Facebook, social media. The commissioners do a good job, putting on the stuff on Facebook. The technical department, they broadcast a lot of what goes on in those chambers, including the CILB meetings, and so that is a great avenue. But the more ways that you get out there and connect with the citizens, the better. Utilizing
Perhaps,
park space to hold mini town halls,
perhaps also.
bi-monthly or something. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add to what you were saying there. Perhaps also getting out information to the community about what commissioners are really doing and educating them about it, because there's a bit of a disconnect as it stands now between people that have been in office for a very long time. Most of them are not connecting directly with the Joes and Janes down the street, so to speak. They have their own little group of networking, but they don't get out to the community. For example, a lot of people didn't even know that there was a primary election here on August 18th. And speaking of that, what is your position on accountability for elected officials and for bureaucrats for that matter?
So they are it seems like a almost like an obvious statement, that's why I chuckled, but they are absolutely accountable, right? They should be super accountable, extra accountable to the people who put them into office. Transparency, I think, is a big thing. We've recently had some I hesitate to use the word controversies, but we've had some things pop up on the current commission that may have been handled a little improperly, in my opinion, just based on the fact of not necessarily allowing outsiders to come into the process. to make sure there's a watchful eye, just so there's no impartiality. Even if there wasn't any, when it comes to politics, optics is a lot more important um, sometimes than what you're actually doing behind the scenes. Because if you're working behind the scenes and doing good things, but nobody necessarily on the outside sees that, but what they do see is the controversy, and that's where things can really stack against you, and you lose a lot of that trust because they don't see all the good things that are happening. All they see are, the bad things, and so that's a communication issue. Yeah, and so we would like to think that there is much more to these stories and these people and these issues, but at the end of the day, uh, everything is mired in mistrust since the way it was initially handled, doesn't invite transparency from the get-go. And so therein lies, I think, maybe at least specifically, obviously, we've got a bigger problem with trust. The higher you go up the chain, people feel very disconnected from their
There's
people
too
they're
big a
sending to
gap.
local office. Yeah,
There's too big a
yeah,
gap between the power position and those that actually vote them in.
yeah.
There's
One
a
of the
disconnect of communication, I think we can say very safely between elected officials in general and the higher up they go. You're right. The greater the disconnect. As a commissioner, you will be placed in a position of making decisions when, for example, nonprofit organizations come in and they're asking for government money. What is your position on vetting and auditing nonprofit organizations that are requesting tax dollars before any checks are written?
Yeah, I
Where
think
do you
that's a good
stand on that?
idea. I think it's a wise idea to vet just anybody who is seeking money from a taxpayer funded source like that. It would, you know, you cut you have to be careful. Obviously, you want to vet for ethical and moral, and perhaps maybe just making sure there's moral clarity in their mission. But if they're necessarily doing something that, if the nonprofit doesn't necessarily support something that is, uh, we'll say on the majority side of things, that doesn't necessarily preclude them from the process, I guess is the way I'm trying to say that you have to be careful when vetting, that you're vetting for things that aren't based on political lines or things that necessarily go outside of the judgment of where government should be stepping in. If what they're proposing to do is legal, is doesn't step on anybody's other rights, like utilizing a public park
You mean
for,
if what they're
yeah,
proposing is in accordance with, for example, the U.S.
decency
Constitution,
standards, right?
enumerated powers of government, and so on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, then they shouldn't necessarily, you're not gonna deny them based on that. But if you're vetting them more for uh financial or for their credentials to make sure that they are responsible, organized, and aren't going to uh waste the money when they're actually doing what they are saying their mission statement is doing, and they have a plan in place to get those dollars into those uh recipients' hands, whatever it is that they're doing.
And benefiting the community. Um,
Right. More importantly, yeah, absolutely benefiting the community and not lining somebody's pockets or anything like that, or going to overhead, or um, you pay a contracting fee and then that other person is a brother-in-law or something like that. Like, that
it's the
kind of stuff.
contract preferentially.
Yeah.
Michael, there is so much talk about data centers and much opposition to both in respect to data centers and also lots of talk in the community now, well, nationwide actually, in terms of government surveillance, flock cameras, and so on. What is your position on that?
Okay, so
Blocking data centers or blocking flock cameras or other surveillance of the community?
yeah, data centers, we'll start there first. When it comes to generally private property rights, right? Like if somebody's selling a piece of property and if your the zoning was in place already for such a facility, then there would be nothing that could be done. The caveat on that is there really isn't any zoning rules when it comes to data centers and large scale institutions uh, of that nature. And so it has become it is incumbent on us to kind of set that boundary. I feel like at the state level or at the county level as much as we can. And so for me personally, I'd be a pretty hard sell on a data center in Charlotte County based purely on demands on the infrastructure. We struggle with projecting our uh, water needs with the explosive boom cycles that we have. We have aging infrastructure all over the community that's also eventually going to need some TLC, and that's going to be very expensive. And so, one of the things that comes with data centers usually is a high demand on the energy grid, and they can supplement that using their own power supplies, which are often environmentally unfriendly, which to me, the environment is a big thing. And so that I will circle back around to that a lot as a major driver in a lot of the decisions that I make, because there
Let me
doesn't seem to
ask
be
you a
anybody
question now that you mention
advocating
that,
for that. Go
because
ahead.
there's so much or such a division between people that support, for example, the Bucky's project because of its proximity to Peace River. What's your
Yeah.
position on that? I mean, it's going to get built, but there was so much division in our community
Yeah.
as to whether that should have been approved in the first place or not.
So the concerns there are, I believe, they have to do with its proximity to the river that's down there, that's right just north of um, one of the tributaries, and so that is a very real concern. But this is where a little bit of my engineering background comes in, and understanding that technology's kind of come a long way with those underground tanks and their containment systems. That area in particular, with its location being proximal to the interstate, as far as location goes, you're not going to get a spot aside from the environmental impacts, which you're going to potentially have in many locations throughout Florida with a build of that size. Wetlands they're just like pop marked all over the state. It's one of the reasons why smart development is really important. Um, but so if and I haven't dug through the submittal documents for Bucky's that like I would do if I was actually in the position, but assuming all of their EPA regulations are being met and their containment systems, they have plans in place. They would have already had to have, containment and cleanup plans in place, given the location that included runoff towards the south. Um, that kind of thing. I feel like that location, I might have been a yes on that one, even given my environmental background. And that's assuming that they have all of their technical ducks in a row. Um, but then also they're it wasn't just a Bucky's as well. There's some other development that goes along with that is being supplemented by that build. So they are coming to the table with something to offer in that case. And that's one of the things that I feel like should happen with a development of that size. If you're coming to impact the area, you got to
How do you
come.
plan on applying your skill sets and your experience, given your background in a deal like this one or
So,
pertaining to data centers?
so it would in a deal like that one, and also pertaining to data centers, it would just be really my strength is being able to dig into the technical data and make sure that there's not any funny business going on with their projections, making sure specifically with their projected impacts, future impacts, and how do they plan on, or how they have accounted for those, and just check to make sure that there's adequate room in there for the explosive nature of our development. One of the things that I feel like has consistently happened throughout the years is that there's been an under projection of the amount of people who are going to be coming year over year. And I get that maybe for the first 5 years, but if it's been happening consistently for generations, then you need to kind of adjust accordingly. You can't keep under projecting and then going like, I don't understand why we can't meet the demand.
So before we wrap up here, we have a few minutes left to talk, and I'd be happy to bring you on again for more questions. And also, I'm happy to have the community out there send us emails with questions. You can go on wethepeoplecc.org and submit your questions there, and we'll be happy to bring Michael back for more. I know some of the people that heard that you were going to be on the show, they wanted to know if you support immediate ordinances to be written into the LDR to protect our aquifers from any high energy use industrial operations here in Charlotte County. That's a
Yeah, I mean,
specific question from one of the voters.
so specifically, I would absolutely do what I can to uh protect the aquifer in our area and remind people that it is a very limited resource and it is something that needs to be protected, even though most people day to day don't really fully appreciate its impact on our area. But I mean, those are the lifeblood of the waterways, and the general topography of Florida is just a big giant rock sponge. And so things that happen in one part of the state can migrate through the limestone and sandstone all the way through. We are, yeah, there are many, many counties who are impacted by a uh, polluted aquifer. And so I am I would do what I could as an environmental champion in that regard to making sure that Charlotte County's environmental resources stay protected and stay viable for generations to come.
Where do you,
Absolutely.
where do you stand on continuous development? And as we've seen in some cities around Florida, they have become heavily overdeveloped. How are you going to protect Charlotte County from overdevelopment?
Yeah, just want to before I forget too.
Please, go ahead.
I'm I'm against the flocks situation. We just kind of
Oh,
glossed over that. I wanted to circle back to that. We can talk more about it later, but I just didn't want that to go unsaid. But yeah, so
you're
how I
against
would
government surveillance and flock cameras. Is that what you're saying?
yeah, it's big intrusion on personal property to have a private company collecting this data for the government. I mean, it's not for exclusive use by the government, so that there's many reasons why it's bad, and I'm actually encouraged that somebody, I believe Greg Stubbe actually came out publicly against them, which was a huge surprise to me that anybody in the establishment would take that hard line publicly like that. But you got to read the
Well,
room eventually, I guess.
he is known to vote according to the most recent Freedom Index scorecard that's published. He votes 86, no, 89% in accordance with the
Hmm,
Constitution, and the Constitution does protect our right to privacy and not have the government infringe upon that
for
whatsoever.
sure.
As we wrap up here, would you care to debate Ms. Kimamantri if we were to bring you guys together? What's your position on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel it's essential for us to get together and have a discussion, debate back and forth, open Q&A. Um, no, there'd be zero mudslinging of any kind. I'm
Keep it
making it a
nice,
point. Yeah, I'm making it a point
of course.
to publicly say as often as I can that that is not what this campaign is about at all. And so we will not be participating in any derogatory campaigning whatsoever. I feel like her record
If we
stands on its
if we were
own.
if we were to arrange a debate either
Yeah.
by Zoom through the podcast here or in person at a location, would you be open to that?
Yeah, both of those I'd be open to. Would prefer it in person.
Of
Get as
course.
many, citizens as there as possible, but
Yep.
absolutely any way possible. I'm all for that.
And Michael, how do people contact your campaign? If they have any questions, besides, of course, they can email us and we will forward it too, but I'm sure you have a website that people can contact you at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The website is www.votemelton26.com. If you go there, there's some contact us. You can sign up for a yard sign. I'll come and deliver it to you. They actually just got here. Here they are. They look awesome. Woo-hoo. There they are. There they are. You can get yourself a nice yard
We'll see
sign.
them out soon, I'm sure.
Yeah, or you can email us. Yeah, September 19th, I believe, is when I can start officially putting out the big signs and stuff like that. So that'll happen. But you
Mhm.
can also email us at vote or at oh man, I'm panicking all of a sudden. It's mm4com at gmail.com.
All right, Michael. Well, thank you so much, and we'll put that in the description as well, so you know how to contact Michael. Thank you so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Pleasure. Bye now.
Thanks. Bye.